If you've ever felt excited about your English progress one week and completely discouraged the next, this video is for you. Because today we're going to talk about one of the biggest lies in language learning, the myth of quick English fluency, and what actually creates deep, permanent, unshakable English. Let's start with something honest. Most English learners have tried to speed up fluency at some point. Maybe you watched 10 YouTube lessons in one day. Maybe you memorized 50 new vocabulary words before an exam. Maybe you forced yourself to study grammar for 3 hours straight because you felt behind. And in the moment, it feels productive. It feels intense. It feels serious. But a week later, the words are blurry. The grammar rules feel distant, and your confidence drops again. Traditional cramming fails because the brain does not work in the way we wish it did. When you overload your mind with information in one session, you create short-term familiarity, not long-term retention. You recognize the rule, but recognition is not mastery. Recognition is not recall, and recognition is definitely not confident, spontaneous speaking. This is why so many learners experience the same frustrating cycle. You learn a beautiful word like meticulous or overwhelmed. You use it once, you feel proud. And then 2 weeks later, in conversation, you need it and it disappears. You know you've seen it. You know you've studied it, but you can't access it. The same thing happens with grammar. You study the present perfect. You understand it during the lesson. You do the exercises correctly, but in a real conversation, you go back to the past simple because it's safer, because it's automatic. That frustration is not a sign that you're bad at English. It's a sign that your study method is fighting your brain instead of working with it. The real goal is not quick fluency. The real goal is unshakable English. Unshakable English means that when you reach for a word, it's there. When you build a sentence, the structure feels natural. When someone asks you a question, you don't panic internally while searching your memory. You respond calmly, confidently, automatically. So how do we build that? This is where spaced repetition changes everything. Spaced repetition is not a trendy productivity trick. It is grounded in cognitive science. Researchers studying memory have shown that we forget information in predictable patterns. This idea is often connected to the forgetting curve, first described by the German psychologist Urban Ebbinghaus in the 19th century. He demonstrated that after learning something new, memory drops sharply until it's reviewed at specific intervals. Without review, we forget quickly. With strategic review, memory strengthens. The key word here is strategic. If you review something too soon, you waste effort because it's still fresh. If you review it too late, you may have forgotten it completely. Spaced repetition works by reviewing information at increasing intervals just before you're about to forget it. That slight mental struggle to recall something strengthens the neural pathway. It tells your brain, this matters, keep this. Memory consolidation happens when information moves from short-term memory to long-term storage. This process requires time and repeated activation. Every time you successfully recall a word or grammar structure after a gap, you reinforce that pathway. You're not just memorizing, you're wiring your brain. And this concept is not limited to language learning. Medical students use spaced repetition systems to remember enormous volumes of information. Anatomy, pharmacology, disease classifications, they cannot afford to forget. Pilots use similar repetition systems in training. Musicians rehearse pieces at intervals to maintain mastery. Elite performers in almost every discipline rely on structured review, not random practice. What makes spaced repetition powerful is that it moves beyond rote memorization. It doesn't just say, repeat this word 10 times. It says, recall this word after 1 day, then after 3 days, then after a week, then after 2 weeks. Each successful recall deepens understanding and strengthens automaticity. When applied correctly to English, this method transforms passive knowledge into active skill. Now let's talk about how to implement this strategically. There are practical tools that make spaced repetition manageable and even enjoyable. Now, this is not a paid advertisement. I have no connection with these apps or platforms, but one of the most popular systems is Anki, a customizable flashcard app built specifically around spaced repetition algorithms. Another widely used platform is Quizlet, which allows for review cycles and can be adapted to spaced intervals when used intentionally. These tools remove guesswork. They calculate when you should see a card again based on your performance. But the tool itself is not the magic. The structure of your cards is. Many learners create weak flashcards. They write a word in English on one side and then a translation in their native language on the other. That can work at the very beginning, but if you want unshakable English, you need deeper processing. For vocabulary, your flashcards should include context. Instead of writing meticulous equals very careful, create a sentence. She was meticulous when preparing her presentation. On the back, define it in simple English and maybe include a second example. Even better, create a card where part of the sentence is missing. She was blank when preparing her presentation. Now your brain must actively retrieve the word from context. For grammar, don't just write rules. Create transformation cards. For example, write, if I had known about the meeting, I would have attended. Then ask yourself, what type of conditional is this? Or create a prompt, third conditional, regret about missing a meeting. Then produce the sentence. This forces application, not passive review. You can also create cards for nuanced usage. For example, what's the difference between say and tell? Instead of memorizing a rule, create example-based recall. He told me the truth. Why not? He said me the truth. Because tell requires an object. That distinction becomes automatic after spaced recall. Collocations are another powerful category. English is full of natural word partnerships. Make a decision. Heavy rain. Strong opinion. If you memorize isolated words, you will sound unnatural. But if you review collocations through spaced repetition, your speech becomes fluid. A card might say, blank, a decision. Your job is to recall make. Another might say, heavy or strong rain. You recall heavy rain. Over time, these patterns become instinctive. Now let's talk about scheduling. In the beginning, new information should be reviewed quickly after 1 day, then 3 days, then a week, then 2 weeks, then a month. Most spaced repetition apps automate this. But if you prefer a manual system, you can review days in your calendar. The important principle is increasing intervals and honest self-assessment. If you recall something easily, the interval grows. If you struggle, the interval shortens. Adaptive learning is critical. If you always mark a card as easy when it's not, you sabotage the system. The power of spaced repetition depends on accuracy. You must be honest about whether you could truly recall the word or structure without guessing. Now here's where it gets exciting. Spaced repetition is not only for vocabulary. It can dramatically improve grammar consistency and pronunciation. Think about complex grammar points like conditionals or perfect tenses. Many learners understand them intellectually but fail to use them spontaneously. By creating recall-based prompts, you strengthen automatic production. For example, create a card that says experience up to now, present perfect. Then produce I have visited London 3 times, or create contrast cards, past simple or past perfect. I blank live here for 5 years. You must recall have lived. Each spaced recall strengthens accuracy under pressure. For pronunciation, spaced repetition can target difficult sound patterns. If you struggle with minimal pairs like ship and sheep, create audio-based cards. Listen and identify which word you hear, or record yourself and compare. For intonation, create prompts such as rising or falling intonation in yes/no questions. Then say the sentence aloud correctly. Repeated spaced practice builds muscle memory in your mouth and auditory discrimination in your ears. I've seen learners completely transform their consistency using this method. One student who constantly mixed up past simple and present perfect created 30 targeted cards focused only on contrast sentences. For 3 months, she reviewed them daily at first, then weekly. Eventually, she stopped translating in her head. The structure became automatic. Another learner who struggled with advanced vocabulary for professional meetings created collocation-based cards specific to his industry. After 6 months of spaced repetition, he reported that words just appeared when he needed. That is unshakable English. But this requires a long game mindset. The biggest mistake learners make is quitting too early. Spaced repetition feels slow at first because you're not cramming, you're building. It's like going to the gym consistently instead of doing one extreme workout. You may not feel dramatic progress in 1 week, but after 3 months, the difference is undeniable. So how do you start today? First, choose one tool. Don't overcomplicate it. Download Anki or Quizlet intentionally. Second, start small. 10 new cards per day is enough. Quality matters more than quantity. Third, review daily. Even 5 to 10 minutes is powerful if consistent. Fourth, focus on high-value language. Words and structures you actually need in your life, job, or studies. Consistency beats intensity every time. To maintain motivation, connect your review sessions to an existing habit. Review after breakfast. Review before bed. Review on your commute. Make it automatic. Track your streak. Celebrate small wins. When you successfully recall a word you learned 3 months ago, pause and recognize the progress. That moment is proof that your system is working. Also, periodically test yourself in real production. Speak, write, notice which words come easily and which ones don't. Adjust your deck accordingly. Spaced repetition is dynamic. It evolves with you. Now, imagine your English 1 year from today. If you apply this method consistently, instead of feeling nervous before conversations, you feel steady. Instead of avoiding complex grammar, you use it naturally. Instead of searching for words, they arrive. Advanced vocabulary is not impressive because it's rare. It's impressive because it's controlled. And control comes from repetition over time. Fluency is not speed. Fluency is stability. When your English becomes unshakable, you stop obsessing over mistakes. You stop fearing forgetting because you know that your system supports you. You trust your memory. You trust your preparation. So if you've been stuck in the cycle of cramming and forgetting, this is your invitation to change strategy. Stop chasing quick fluency. Start building durable mastery. Start reviewing strategically. Start strengthening your memory the way science tells us it works. Your future English self is not built in one intense weekend. It's built in daily 5-minute reviews. It's built in honest self-assessment and consistent practice. And when you look back months from now, You won't just say, I studied English. You'll say, I built English that stays. That's the difference between fluent and unshakable. If you commit to the long game, spaced repetition will quietly, steadily transform your ability to think, speak, and express yourself in English with clarity and confidence. And that transformation doesn't depend on talent, it depends on structure. So start today. One card, one review, one small step toward English that never disappears when you need it most.